Okay, so I believe I just started a stream on YouTube. And I will get the link and I'll throw that in the Zoom chat.
So while he's doing that, I think I'll just go ahead and do like a quick little recap on the stream setup. Basically, the first thing you want to do is create your scenes.
Okay, so
Get
I
if you want to
believe
have a
I just
starting
started a
soon or any
stream
kind of
on
those things,
YouTube.
get them all added in. And then once you get your scenes created, then you're going to go scene by scene, making sure you have the proper sources in there, whether it's text sources for starting soon or team names, or if it's physical game captures. That way you can have the game running if you're in the during game screen. And then from there, you want to go towards your audio captures, making sure that desktop audio is capturing the game, or if you have casters, capturing the casters, and that your mic audio is picking up your actual audio if you want to be the one kind of running the event. A couple other things as well that's kind of a little bit more advanced is Streamlabs OBS gives you the ability to go into the actual settings and assign things to hotkeys. So in this case, with the number of scenes we have, if Will so chooses to, if he has, a little touchpad with extra keys on it, or if he has his numpad, which he doesn't really use, whenever Streamlabs is open, he can assign different keys to different scenes. So if you wanted his starting soon key to be one, instead of having to go over, click on the scene, and do everything else, he can just hit the number one on his keyboard and it'll switch it for him. A small thing too, which is something that I just have on me, is there's this Stream Deck by Elgato, which is basically just a small little 15 key keyboard. It's strictly a function device to where all of these keys have different scenes on it. In my case, I have the icons. I know it's hard to see, but every one of them has a small description underneath it as well. So I can be in game and I don't have to tab out of my game or literally take my hand off of my keyboard. I can just reach over, hit the next key, and it switches it for me. So those are just kind of small things when it comes into getting things to run even smoother. Is you can actually set those scenes to hotkeys. You can set starting stream, stopping stream to hotkeys, muting, unmuting. You can pretty much get everything down to where you can have it by keys. The only time that becomes difficult to manipulate is like in our case, we have to go in, retype team names and those kind of things, which aren't really things that you can kind of hotkey. But when it comes to just starting, going in between casters and match play, you can kind of simplify it a little bit by using hotkeys. Just something else to keep in mind. But the very last thing besides that is obviously connecting to the platform of your choice, whether it's Twitch or YouTube. As Will was saying, you can go into your Twitch account settings and you'll have a primary stream key that OBS will have you copy and paste in there, which will link the accounts together. And as Mary mentioned, YouTube has a similar system, which you can find in your account settings. And there are countless videos. And I want to say that OBS even has a little hyperlink that takes you straight to it in a browser as long as you're logged into your account on that browser. So that's kind of the general setup when it comes to different platforms as well.
With your hotkeys, do you guys have your goals connected to them too?
Goals?
Uh, I
Yeah,
don't think we do.
that's something you can add in as a hotkey to, like, not goals, I mean games one. So that way you're not having to like push it in the sources button. You can use the Stream Deck
Oh,
to do
gotcha.
it from there.
Cool. So we
I
say
think that might be easier for you.
right. So you're basically saying that you can hotkey the different sources for the number of games won by each team instead of having to hide them and unhide them.
Yeah.
That's
Oh,
cool.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that also does things for audio too. You can hotkey muting different audio devices. Um, I didn't use any hotkeys for the stream on Sunday because I knew I wasn't going to cast or play. I was just going to focus on production, so it was plenty easy for me to use this studio menu right here and click around and control volumes uh, live as I needed to. So I just started a little test stream, and I don't know if you were watching. It was super easy. I just clicked go live, and we went live. I think anyone else trying to stream on YouTube or Twitch would definitely need the stream key, but for some reason, since I'm the first, I guess it didn't need it.
Maybe because it was already connected. Like if you've used it before on your computer, it shouldn't keep asking you.
Okay. Yeah, that'd make a lot of sense.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's got some sort of MAC verification where you don't have to keep putting it in. A MAC address verification. I'm not sure which one it is.
so now I think what I'll do is let Ryan talk about the notes we have on casting, if that's how we want to wrap up the streaming side of things.
All right. Um, so obviously this workshop is streaming and casting is a very big part of holding these kind of events. Casting, for anyone who's watched esports, usually is where, in my opinion, over half of the actual content comes from. You can watch the game all you want, but what really brings in new viewers and attracts an audience are the people who are going over the game and casting it themselves. Couple major keys that we kind of, collectively from the casting group at UDRL have come with is learning when to gauge your audience, looking at the entertainment value of the game versus the actual like skill value, and then also in this case with us streaming to a platform like Twitch, learning to read chat, kind of gauge what's going on. You see people aren't really understanding what's going on in the match, kind of gauging your casting based off of that, and then as well as knowing how to cast high level gameplay versus lower level gameplay, and then as well kind of the two different types of casting and the kind of formula we came up with, which is shout casting and color casting, or analytical casting. So the approach that we kind of took to it was having one caster be more of a shout caster and one be more of a color caster, which for us worked being in our case, Dave was our color caster, Dan was our shout caster. The color caster brings a lot of technical knowledge to casting. So they go over what's going on in the game at a technical level, looking at technical analysis, breaking down their opinion on how the team can improve or how the game's going, who in our case, who has majority possession, how smooth the team's playing together. And then shoutcasting is where they basically generally talk about the game, kind of similar to your casters or commentators in like baseball or football, just kind of saying person X is doing this pass was made. Effectively, the color caster or the analytical caster just takes that shout casting and refines it just a little bit and adds that extra bit of technical knowledge to it that helps people who are watching learn a little bit more about the game that they may not have known before. We kind of found this to be a better balance instead of having, two people who are just watching over the game, because now you have a new dynamic instead of having two people who know a lot about the game and are just throwing hard technical facts at them and terminology that may be specific to that game. Now you have kind of this balance of someone who can just say it well enough to where people can come in, understand what's going on, and then also be able to learn more about that game without feeling overwhelmed. When it comes to just the overall formula that we used. Another thing that we've noticed as well, at least with our personal games, is gauging the level of skill from match to match. One thing that I know me and Will have talked about a lot, and some of the other casters have talked about as well, is learning how to approach each one of our matches when it comes to casting that match from the standpoint of the teams that are playing and how skillful they are. Being this intramural league, we had plenty of teams in there who weren't very familiar with the game, hadn't been playing very long, and weren't playing at a very high level. The kind of problems that bring for casting wise is it's very hard to technically analyze a low level team when half the time they're missing the ball or half the time they're not making these kind of plays you're seeing in higher level gameplay. So our approach to this problem has, whenever going in as a caster, because you're going to know more about the teams, you need to learn about both teams, learn about their rankings in the tournament, how they've been playing, is when you're going into these lower level matches, keep the chat and the overall casting a little more lighthearted, a little more fun. Don't over analyze it too much, because then you're getting into analyzing gameplay that really can't be this hyper analyzed, because you're just going to be repeating yourself. So keeping it more lighthearted, keeping it more fun, keeping it a little bit more of a relaxed environment, that way people can kind of just enjoy the stream as well for what it is. This isn't high level gameplay. This isn't, RLCS, championship series professionals. These are just people coming in, having a good time, playing in the intramural league. And if we take a professional approach to that, we've noticed that usually our audience is having a hard time sticking with it, because it almost feels like there's a disconnect between the casters and the gameplay that's going on. And then when it comes to higher level gameplay, we kind of step away from that hyper relaxed or that super lighthearted approach to it, and you bring some more technical analysis into it because you know the players are higher in the ranks. You know they have put more time into the game, and you can kind of expect to see that more solid and fluid gameplay to where that technical analysis is really going to come in crucially to see how they're playing to inform the audience of what's going on. So those are the two general approaches we've taken to casting, at least in the UD club. There's been multiple approaches game by game. Obviously, it's going to be hard to be super technical in different games like Call of Duty Warzone, where Warzone is more of an RNG based game where not everything is completely dependent on skill, or like 2K, where most people are going to be, there's going to be the very good select few. Obviously, what you talk about and how you analyze it is going to be dependent on the game, but we kind of try to generalize a formula to it to help everyone in this case who are interested in casting.
Cool. Yeah. Thank you, Ryan. I just have a quick question. So when did you start casting? How did you get into that? Because many things you mentioned, right? Like a color casting, it's very similar, right, to what we see in professional sports. I'm just curious, right? As someone, what's your major again? What's your here?
I'm a computer engineer.
Yeah,
That's
computer
my major.
engineering. Yeah, how did you get into that area and how did you learn everything?
So my bring into casting is probably an unconventional one. I haven't done local events. I haven't done anything to that extreme. Most of my casting actually came from playing games like Counter Strike, playing games like H1Z1 with my friends, doing my own personal streams, and casting games as they were happening. So I was playing Counter Strike, I would die early, I would switch to a teammate, I would cast as they were playing like it was an event. That's kind of where I developed my skill for it, was doing it that way, and it ended up getting to the point where people were like, you're actually pretty good at this, don't stop doing this, and kind of see where this goes. When it comes down to learning more about it, I started watching more professional events, seeing how they were kind of approaching the game, seeing if I was doing anything different. And especially with casting in particular, you can pretty much watch any sport and see how casting is done. I think esports is a little more intense than casual casting of, physical sports games, because I just feel there's a little bit more energy there. While in football on ESPN, you just hear general talks about how the game's going and then sometimes statistics on the players. But other than that, my bring into casting was literally just by playing games in the past and then trying it out one day and then just kind of rolling with it and keeping going.
Yeah, that's definitely fascinating to me. Like, I actually talked to a communication before about having some classes, right? Like commentating, like sport commentating or casting. But when you take a look at esports, it's like most of the streamers or casters is like self-educated. You learn everything right when you actually play it. So
Yeah,
yeah,
it's kind of the best approach to it. I don't really know. You can definitely bring a structure to casting. Like you can definitely help with that, but in my opinion, casting is similar to a public speaking class. You're gonna have to learn how to speak in front of audiences, learn how to speak to audiences, except in this case, instead of it and always being in front of a live audience, you're going to have to learn more of less of the professional, here's my thesis and here's how I want to present it to it, and more into like being more adaptable to how the game's going to go, because not every game is the same. So it's more focused on analysis of the game with a sprinkle of public speaking in there rather than your typical learning how to speak in front of a crowd.
yeah. So I think we still have a few more minutes. Anything else, Weir and Ryan, you want to add?
I guess one thing we didn't really cover, but this is going back to the beginning of it. Um, Things you can change in OBS regarding the overall quality of your stream. The reason, so I can do my streams at 1080p, which is HD, 30 frames a second, which is, standard for like movies and stuff, so it all looks smooth enough. The reason I can do that is because I do have a decent upload speed, um, and I don't know that that's so easily gotten. Um, I was fortunate; my house has good upload speed, but I'm not on Dayton's internet. I highly doubt anyone using eDoRoam is capable of running a 1080p 30 frame stream. So that's something to consider. But where you go to change that is here in video. If you go down to the settings at the bottom left, you can pull up this video menu, and have it all set to 30 frames, 1920 by 1080. There might be a way to change that while streaming. I'm not sure, but the reason it's locked off now is because I'm streaming.
Okay.
I'm gonna add one more thing to that too, because that's a very important point. Your quality of the stream, so however the output rate that you can put it at, as Bill was saying, depending on two things: your internet speed and the hardware that you're streaming from that PC. Internet speeds, personal experience with the hardware that I have, 1080p 60 fps, I have been able to stream fairly smooth, not any hiccups except for very rare occasions, with at least 10 megabytes per second upload speed. um, Problems with that, that's usually the higher end of most internet service providers packages, because most ISPs are based off of download speed and not upload speed. So usually to get higher upload speeds, you need to get faster download speeds, because unless you're a business account, they don't really make those custom packages to where you could get like 50 down, 50 up. Usually it's like 50 down, 5 up, or something along those lines. Second, when it comes to quality, your hardware you're running is very important. Usually, multi-core CPUs do a better job encoding the stream. It's a kind of a lesser known topic when it comes to streaming, because it's kind of difficult. But if you have any sort of recent NVIDIA graphics card, like a RTX 2000 series or newer, then when you go into your Streamlabs OBS, go into your settings, and you go into the stream settings, it's going to say there's going to be an encoder for you. There's NVENC or NVENC, which is the GPU doing all of the hardware encoding for your stream. And then there's H264, which means that the CPU is taking on that load itself. Usually when you open up OBS, it's going to ask you, do you already know your stream settings? If not, we will diagnose your system and we will choose the best fit for you. 9 times out of 10, this works solid, unless you have a personal reason for changing it otherwise. I think in my personal OBS, I think I'm running an NVENC encoder right now, which means that my graphics card is doing most of it, because I have a 2070 Super in my PC. And all that means is that when the stream is running, all of the encoding of the actual data and sending out to Twitch is done by the graphics card. Reason why NVENC is important for recent graphics card is because NVIDIA has built in their own encoders to assist streamers. So 2000 series or newer RTX graphics cards have been designed to handle this process in particular better, so where your CPU doesn't have to. But for example, if you have a 8-core, 16-core processor, moving to that H264 encoding package may do better, because sometimes having all of that encoding data done on your graphics card as well as gaming can really strain it. So two things to consider: internet speeds and then the hardware you have. The newer the hardware you have, the easier it's going to be. The older hardware you have, a little bit more difficult, because then you get into presets of how fast it's going to be encoding and all that kind of thing.
Cool. Yeah. Any other question, Joe? Cam, have any question?
I think going off that last topic just one more time, because there is
Here's
one more
what I found.
point. Yeah, your Siri. Besides the encoder as well, when you're in OBS, depending on your internet speeds, it's going to ask you for a video bit rate in the settings. Like I said, first time you open up OBS, it's going to tell you, if you don't know what you're doing, let us do it for you. And they're going to choose your bit rate based off your internet speeds. It's going to choose your encoder packages. It's going to choose your bit rates, all that kind of stuff that normally streamers try to hand tune themselves to get the highest quality. It's going to choose for you based off of the hardware. It's going to, use NVIDIA to look at your hardware specs and all that kind of stuff. But in general, at least if you're going with Twitch, your video bit rate is going to be the portion of upload speed it's going to take from your internet to do all that encoding to the server. Twitch has a maximum of 6,000 kilobytes per second, but if you're noticing performance issues on stream, you can lower that number down from 0 to 6,000. Usually the higher quality, if you're doing 1080, you're going to want to go closer to that 6,000. If you're doing 720, you want to come, closer to 3,000.